Guest speaker is Glenn Shick, who everybody here Glenn, as you all know, is one of the trustees of Harrison, Atlanta, former president of Harrison, Atlanta, an excellent and experienced mastering engineer. How many projects do you think you and I worked on together? 30, 50?
Probably.
A lot.
A lot, yeah.
Plenty. One of the things I most value about working with Glenn is not only his skills, but the fact that he is unfailingly honest and plain spoken. Even if he disagrees with something, he is one of the few people that I have paid money to master my recordings, who, when he disagrees about the way something's been done, thinks something could sound better, thinks have erred some way in the past, will challenge me on it and will point it out to me and at least give me the option of doing it a different way. And there are some people that goes over better with than others. Me, I value it more than anything because I feel like he's working towards the long-term goal of making the art better, which is, again, we all serve the artist, right? So that is a valuable skill to have. It's something I value in Glenn. And the more you spend time with somebody, you learn something new about him. And I'm sure that he's not going to talk about this today, and you're probably not going to have any questions prepared for this, but I also learned at lunch today that in a previous life, that Glenn had employment as a children's birthday party clown in New York City. He can do Big Bird, Ghostbusters, Miss Piggy. Does anybody in here have Googled that and found out about Glenn yet? You will get some bonus points. Don't raise your hands, I don't believe. So, without further ado, for change, I'm going to shut up and I'll turn it over to Glenn Shick.
First of all, I got to tell you guys that when David called me and I found out, first of all, that he got the position here, I was kind of really encouraged, because David's one of those guys that's always been kind of a very, he's a hands-on kind of guy. He gets with his clients and he really kind of works with them. He finds out what they want. You probably noticed just in the short time you've been with him that he kind of gets personal really quickly with y'all. And working with David over the years has been just a beautiful experience. It's always, whether it's challenging or not, whether it's an easy gig or a hard gig, at the end of the day, it's always a really rewarding experience, and I think you guys are really lucky to have him here. So I just want to say it's really nice to see him here. As a matter of fact, on the last project we did together, which was Drive-By Truckers record, David brought me something which immediately felt like a nail to my ear, and he has this one piece which he loves now, and I immediately went, "What is that?" And I was trying to fix it, and he was like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm trying to fix this." And eventually I found out he loved this sound, and so I stopped trying to fix it, but it took us a good whole afternoon of banging our head against the wall until we finally reached a happy point and realized that it was the client that really wanted it, David that really wanted it. So whether I liked it or not, I wanted to get the best of that thing for those guys.
He made it work.
Yeah. But so this comes down to the basic thing of music business for me personally. What I kind of drill into my staff and what the mantra I've always lived by, and what my dad kind of taught me, honestly. My dad had a little retail shop, and he sold trophies and plaques out of a little store in New York, and he used to kill himself every day. My parents would work from 8 o'clock in the morning to 7 o'clock at night, and they didn't make a lot of money, but my dad always was killing himself. And I was like, "Why are you doing this?" And he's like, it's about making the customers happy. And the bottom line is that's the biggest gift that I ever got passed, was that my father taught me this kind of customer service, making your client happy, the personal communication, that bond that you have is everything. So I don't care which end of the business you guys end up in, whether you're in publishing or legal or you're a studio guy, you're sitting behind there, or if you're sitting all by yourself in some post-production room. The only people that ever really do well in this business are the people that you don't hate, that you want to be around, that kind of give you a nice smile at the end of the day, and don't discount that little bit, because that goes for so much. You cannot have the skill level you can attain the skill, but if you don't have the personal skills to kind of connect with people, you're dead in the water. So, you know, if you're shy and you want to, you know, kind of like get out there, you know, it's okay being shy, it's okay having whatever lack of skills, just get out there and make that personal connection, whatever it is. And that's kind of, you know, the biggest thing I can tell you right off the bat. You know, obviously, in music business, you want to know where you're going to make money, where you're going with this stuff, how do you make money. As David said, you know, one of my many jobs other than kids party clown was probably house painting. I think I counted, I did statistics for traffic, like sitting on a corner in the middle of New York City, counting which car went this way and which car went this way, and really horrible sales jobs. And, you know, the bottom line is it took me a long time to make a living doing anything in the industry. And while I was working all these jobs, I was working at night and usually working for free. You know, I started out as a musician, and I would take any job. I wouldn't care what kind of music it was. Didn't know if I knew how to play it or not. And I'd play on that just to get the experience. And, you know, I'd take whatever kind of engineer jobs that came along. You know, we were all self-taught, so we were horrible engineers when we hit the streets. And, you know, I listened to some of the records we made back then, and they're really horrible. And I prefer if you don't Google those. But you know, the thing is that, you know, we went through the motions of really just busting our chops and really trying to get better. And so, you know, you talk about ways to make money. You know, in the past was really different from what things are now. You know, just some examples kind of like what was going on past-wise. You know, labels, major labels, obviously kind of disappearing now. Publishing, performing, recording, legal, licensing, artist development. Just to kind of, you know, this is kind of the traditional ways we've made money for, you know, the last 30, 40 years in the music business. What's kind of gone on now, I went and actually looked up some statistics last night, and it was kind of shocking. From about 1992 till about 2000, like around 92, there was about 20,000 new releases in 92 of just music releases. So that kind of steadily grew all the way up to about 2000. And then all of a sudden 2000 hit, and that was like the year of Napster and all that, that's basically where that started. So around 2000, you would think, you know, Napster, all this stuff, the releases would probably either continue at that same rate or they'd probably fall at that point. But for some reason, the releases quadrupled. So from like 2000 to present, it's about 4 times growth just right from that short point. And you know, you wonder why. What's the reasoning for this? You know, the thing that, you know, obviously comes to mind is all home studios, people doing everything themselves. So the releases have gone through the roof. Like the actual amount of product getting released nowadays is just crazy. But the converse of that is that sales, actual product, has gone down like crazy. So from, let me see if I got my figures on sales here. All right, so where are we here? Got it. All right. Sales peaked at about 2000, which was about the same time as the Napster thing. But then, currently, we've dropped down to about the sales levels of 1983. So we're talking now, you know, physical product sales and digital sales, we're talking combined, have dropped down to the point of when CDs were first released. This is pretty amazing stuff now. So we're talking about like literally the whole industry has been set on its butt right now. So like, what do? You know, how are you guys going to make money at this point? You know, you can't go in the same kind of models that you went before. My business is changing like crazy. I'm in the mastering business. You guys all know what mastering is? It's kind of like the final polish of the music. So, you know, when David gets all the mixes done, he comes, brings it to me, and I polish the music. It's a specialty. And while I used to kind of be a jack of all trades, And I used to, you know, take a gig being a musician, take a gig being a mix guy, and take a gig being, you know, whatever. I started specializing back around 95, 94. And I found that all of a sudden my worth as a commodity grew like crazy. So when you're talking about, you know, the industry's disappeared, everything's gotten kind of level, the whole playing ground's kind of, it's all even now. Everybody's got just as much of a chance of doing something as anybody else right now. So what I kind of recommend that you guys start looking at is kind of thinking about niches and specialties that you guys can start looking at. And I think while it's good to start having a background of a lot of different things so you have some resources to pull from, in the end of the day right now, people need specific skills. And maybe now more than they ever have, because, like, for instance, the guys that come for me from a home studio vantage, you know, they're not professional mixers. So they come to me with a mix, and they go, hey, Glenn, master this. And I go, man, your mix is terrible. You know, you're going to waste your money mastering this with me. And they're like, well, what do I do? Well, it's like, you can call a professional mixer like Dave if you want. And they're like, I don't have any money. So, you know, if they don't have any money, I send them back and I give them a list of stuff that they need to fix. And, you know, sometimes they can fix it and sometimes they can't. And if they can't, I say, go see David or go see somebody like David. You know, if they can't fix things, I've now become a resource for these guys to come get knowledge from. So my background and my specialty now has become a focus for somebody to come reach out to, as where 20 years ago, a mastering guy, you'd never do that. So the way I do business now is different. It's not the same as, you know, 20 years ago. 20 years ago, whatever came in, I'd put my little touch on, it would go back out. Now, I'm a consultant. Where did that come from, you know? So the thing is, you want to start looking at what things within your own kind of interest and expertise can be your niche thing. I wrote down a couple of things that, you know, just kind of examples. A drum tech, a guitar tech, somebody that specializes in just one little tiny field. A live sound guy, a mastering guy like myself, somebody who's an expert on taking samples, somebody who's a vocal tuner. I can't even tell you like how in demand guys that like just auto-tune vocals are in good studios. They're like, you know, they're gods when they walk in now. It's the goofiest job. It's like, for me, it's like the most boring thing. It's like sitting at a word processor and auto-correcting spelling or something, but you know, these are the guys that are in demand now. What else? Pro Tools editors. There's all kinds of video specialties. But, you know, if you start applying that basic ideology to what you are interested in and kind of what you can kind of make happen for you, it's an awesome thing. So, you know, the other thing that we're talking about is like, because the labels are kind of disappearing, our major label business has suddenly changed from being, you know, a major part of our business to like a minor part of our business. Most of our stuff's independent now. And most of the artists, you know, people like Indigo Girls and things like that, who were, you know, big label people at one point, are all in now. They're all paying for stuff out of their own pockets. They don't want to spend a lot of money. Even if they have it, they don't want to spend a lot of money. And so, you know, what's changed right now, and what's the other focus that you can kind of look at if you're not a specialty person, if you're not somebody that wants to kind of like focus on a specific skill set. So another thing you guys might want to look into are being part of like an indie talent pool. I think part of the real future of this business now is going to be in these great sets of talent pools, small labels, collectives. You know, the majors kind of lost their chance to kind of grab at these little talent pools, and I think it's actually kind of too late for them now. But I know there's like big companies like Live Nation and other people that are kind of looking and going, wow, I can buy this little record company that's got 10 great bands, and you know, we can probably make a good amount of money on these 10 bands because they all have followings, they all sell so many records, they're you know, relative and established groups. So you've got like this great little collective of talent to pick from. So, you know, indie record pools, indie talent pools, another thing of the future. Licensing. There's a lot of companies that are now specializing in licensing music, and I don't think that as a business is going to do anything but grow. So, you know, once again, if you're not interested in developing a specific skill set, that's another industry that you can kind of apply yourself towards. So hopefully I've thrown out a couple of ideas of some other things you guys can kind of like pull from as a resource. Do you want to talk about Naris at all, or
I want to interject here. If at any point the same rules apply for Glenn as do for anybody else and myself, you know, here, if you got any questions for Glenn,
yeah,
just stick it up. If there's anything that he's talked about that you want to know more about, raise your hand.
What exactly do you mean by a talent pool?
Talent pool would be like a group of people. It could be a bunch of songwriters, it could be a bunch of bands, could be a bunch of beat masters, it could be whatever. But it's a group of people that basically pool their talent and get together as a collective that you become much more of a force, and you can bargain with people more, and you can, you know, really have much more to offer. So,
All right.
yeah.
What about artist development?
Artist development, I think, is kind of a thing of the past. Artist development used to be one of the key things that our business was found on. You know, people like the Bob Dylans and all that stuff, where, you know, they take this raw, you know, talent and then they put them with, you know, writers and producers. Just nobody has the time or kind of future foresight now to kind of develop talent like they used to. They'd much rather exploit stuff. They'd much rather exploit stuff and you know, just kind of get the quick buck out of it and go on with it. But I don't think artist development is ever going to be the same. So,
you were saying that being a jack of all trades kind of was very a key part of you, kind of like surviving and making money and finding your specialization. But would you say that it like you're saying, being one of the, you know, licensing guy or mastering guy, picking one of these specialties, is there still like a need to kind of know a little bit about everything?
well, I think, you know, the more and wider your base is, the more valuable you always are as a person. When people come to me for mastering, you know, I don't have to be a musicologist, but the fact that I know pretty much every genre of every kind of music helps. When they come in there and they say, you know, it's this kind of hip-hop, not this kind of hip-hop, I know what they're talking about. I'm not just some guy turning knobs. So, I mean, the same thing applies, you know, if you're going in and you're trying to place a band or place a song. Say you're in a licensing company and you're trying to place a song in a movie, and it's an action movie, and you're putting this, you know, hardcore alternative thing in there that doesn't fit into the movie, you're going to be a better licensing guy. So the more you got, the better you're going to be.
Could you go into more detail about since someone who like samples?
There's a lot of points to that. There's guys that actually develop sounds, like sound designers, which actually kind of will, you know, start sample libraries. There are guys that do sample collection for like beat libraries and things like that. There are guys that go out in the field and actually, you know, record stuff. You know, like I said, it's more a niche thing. There's guys now like that do just drum libraries or string libraries, you know, beat libraries. So it's really kind of you know, what you're kind of good at and what you can kind of make out of it. You know, even if it's something new. Okay.
Anybody else?
How do you create that personal connection with your clients?
I think the best thing is being really honest with them. I try never to, you know, BS my clients. If somebody says, do you like this or do you not like this, I'll usually tell them the truth. It's not always the thing they want to hear. You try to also temper that with your humanity, because you don't want to hurt people's feelings. You know, I've actually had early on in the process, I think it's because I have a kind of blunt style. I made some guy cry when I criticized his mixes. I'm not kidding. And I thought this guy was like, you know, tough as nails and whatever, and I just laid out, you know, this was wrong, this was wrong, this was wrong, this was wrong. And I didn't hear anything from him for a few minutes, and I looked behind me, and I saw his eyes were all watery. And I felt so horrible. And like, no, I profusely apologized to the guy, and I never, ever approached a client so kind of hard-assed again. And, you know, I kind of have to test the waters with every client now and kind of see, are they sensitive? Are they not sensitive? Is this a good client to kind of let it go on, or is this a good client to say, here's just 1 or 2 constructive tips, and off you go? So, you know, I think being sensitive and intuitive to the people that you deal with is going to be important, and, you know, just trying to find some common ground. It could be, you know, where'd you grow up? You know, what do you do? What do you like to do for fun? Or you can meet on that stage that you're there professionally for. So a lot of our clients, you know, I'll go, you know, where'd you grow up, you know? And that's where we start talking, and that's where we get a connection from. So, and, you know, a lot of them are just really nice people. Most of my clients are awesome. So, you know, I actually like 99% of them, you know? So it makes it pretty easy.
Since you work with a rather like small operation as far as like your company, like what characteristics do you look for in your engineers?
Well, the thing that all my guys, you know, I push their button and I go, what's the most important thing? It's like customer service, customer service, customer service. And so, yeah, knowing how to deal with people is going to be the biggest thing. You know, anybody who works for me is job one. Knowing that client, making sure they're happy, taking care of them, making sure they don't feel ignored or that, you know, their stuff was put aside. You know, I had somebody come in recently and was like, you know, they sat down on a session and I got a call from, you know, a really famous person, and, you know, I said, I'm sorry, I can't really talk right now, I got a client in the room. And he was like, was that so-and-so you were just talking to? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, you just hung up on him to have me sit in your room? I was like, well, yeah, you're my client right now, and you know, I'm not going to stop everything I'm doing just because, you know, he's a famous guy. And he was blown away by that. So, you know, that's the way you got to treat people. So.
This might get a little bit more technical, but I know that there's like a broad spectrum of people in here. There are some of us who have been actively involved in the mastering process, some of us who have just simply performed on a record, some who probably haven't ever been in the studio. Can you talk a little bit about, without taking 45 minutes, because I'm sure you could, about the actual mastering process, like what you, I read a little bit about it on your website, like what you do and that kind of stuff, and what to not do before you bring your record to, or before you bring your mix.
We'll make a mini one because I don't want to bore the non-technical folks here. Mastering, which is kind of why I asked you guys originally, like, you know what it is. When there's 3 parts to really like a recording. There's the tracking, the mixing, and the mastering, the 3 main components of those things as far as the recording end goes. And you know, in the tracking, basically all the sounds are decided. In the mixing, the sounds are balanced and you know, affected, and that composition is made. And then the mastering really becomes a polish. And you know, in the same way, like the mixing becomes everything, kind of all these parts coming down into a small, you know, concentrated ball. And when, you know, David brings me his concentrated song there, I kind of go, all right, I can make that guitar sparkle a little more, or I can bring that voice out a little bit more. And I'm kind of like pulling that polish and pulling that as big as I can make it, and kind of adjusting for the fact that it's going on different mediums. Because part of mastering used to be the process of actually putting stuff to a vinyl record, which is something we still do. And you know, that in itself was a very technical thing and took certain physical limitations. And the mastering guy had to kind of figure out that, you know, the song's this long and it's going to fit on this amount of vinyl and it's this loud. And, you know, we were the guys that made the calculations at that point. But now it's become a little bit more of a creative process. as well as technical. So it's about 50-50, what I do, technical versus creative, and it's really kind of an overall balance and polish of what the music is.
This is more for you personally, but do you enjoy the process of polishing each part of the music, or would you rather just have a finished product as your favorite part of the process?
Well, the music's generally, as a piece, is finished when I get it. I mean, they've already decided, you know, where the vocals are going to be and what parts are in it and everything like that. So I'm not going to say, hey, move this chorus over here to somebody. But I will kind of say, hey, this album would sound a lot better if it had like a vintage feel, or if it was really bright and poppy, or, you know, I can't really hear this in your mix. Maybe if we brought this out a little more, it would really make this record sing. So I love being part of the process, and I love what I do. I pinch myself every day for, you know, being able to do this and actually make a living doing it. And yeah, I'm pretty darn happy.
What pushed you from being a jack of all trades into specifically mastering?
An accident, basically. I had a guy I used to mix records with. We were actually talking about before, as a producer named Jeff Grossman, and he was. How do you describe Jeff? Jeff was. He came from the era of rock stars, like real rock stars. So he produced like Black Sabbath and Kansas, and all the time when like 70s guys were like rock stars. So he was like the swaggering producer to walk in his studio, and he'd clear the whole place out and be like, get out of my way, you know. It's kind of like, you know, so I, like the little, you know, follower, would follow him around, and I'd assist him and stuff, and we'd mix records together and stuff. And this is about 17, 18 years ago. We were mixing some stuff, and he said, you'd be a good mastering guy. And I went, eh. So he showed up at my studio one day where I was recording some bands, and he brought me some gear, and he said, try it. And I tried it, and my client said, wow, this is really cool. This is better than what I paid for somebody who said that they knew what they were doing last time. So I was like, really? And like for me, it was like tons of fun. I was like, oh, this is much cooler than what I did before, you know? So I started fooling around with it, and eventually just found that was a great fit for my ear. I was a much better mastering guy, it turned out, than I was a mixing guy. There are guys like, you know, David and other guys that do much better than I ever did at my peak. And that's great. I give mixers more jobs now than I could ever do any other time. So like now I refer people constantly to good mixers. And you know, at one time I would want to say, I'm going to take this job myself. You know, I'm not the best mixer. I was okay, you know, but I'm a really good mastering. Who's next? I'm going to go.
I had a question going back to the mastering process. If the analog mastering is like the new technology, why do people still use like audio tapes?
Well, analog is not new technology. Analog's been around for, you know, 100 years here. As far as why people use tape, tape is a very pleasant sounding medium, and you know, guys like David, who's one of my few clients that still love to use tape, some people just like the inherent quality of it. You know, it's like, why do you like orange soda? You know, Coke is the most popular. I like orange soda because I like orange, you know? So it's kind of the same thing with tape. Tape is like a certain flavor of things, and some people still like it. And, you know, it's got a certain sound and feel that, you know, a lot of people just find very pleasant.
I want to speak up in defense of tape. Tom could speak in defense of tape too. I use tape and digital. I have in my studio, I've got Pro Tools. I've got obsolete digital tape machines. Do you want to buy a couple? No. I've got quarter-inch, half-inch, 2-inch, all kinds of tape formats. I've got old stuff and new stuff. Tape. Do you guys, I mean, you know the difference in film and video? It's the same thing with tape and digital. The tape fuzzes the sound out in a pleasant way. I got in a great conversation with a gentleman named Bob Richardson. He was an engineer in Atlanta who opened his studio in 1958, which his first one was where the North Druid Hills MARTA station is today, and then his next one was where the AT&T building is today down on Spring Street. Yes, he retired quite well off thanks to the real estate purchases of spots in Atlanta. But Bob did a lot of sessions with my dad in the 60s and 70s, and so when I got in a recording, I went to see Bob, and he was against tape. He was ready to embrace the new digital technology, and Bob's reason was tape, the sound that people perceive as warmth is distortion. And as a technical-minded fellow, he was correct. But the harmonic distortion generated by tape was something that he as an engineer wanted to avoid. Me, though, as a listener of music, felt like if it sounds like warmth, it's warmth. It doesn't matter what causes it. I know Superman can't really fly, or the actor that plays Superman can't actually fly. But it doesn't matter to me when I'm watching the movie, he can fly. It doesn't matter that it's not about reality. A lot of times any work of art is about suspending reality to get sucked inside it in whatever way it is. If it was all, as our buddy Steve Albini would want it to be, simply a document of a performance with no enhancement whatsoever, he's a diehard tape guy too, though. That's fine. But tape is just another one of your creative tools in your palette. The smearing of it, to me, to get back to what I could have said in like 5 seconds, is it's like film versus video.
It is, my opinion is that it sounds better.
I agree.
That's the way that I would describe it. It's not all the time true, which I'm sure Glenn can attest to, that people will bring you projects that they have done dig mixes and analog mixes of, and you can kind of go back and forth and find the things that you like about either one. But the downfall of it is that it's extraordinarily expensive now. Just what is 12 reels 2-inch tape now?
12 reels 2-inch tape would be $3,600 plus tax.
Right.
Which
10 years ago, what would they cost?
It would cost half that.
Yeah. So
And what you get on 12 reels of analog tape, you can fit into a 500 gig hard drive.
Easily.
Easily, with room to spare. Yeah, you can get a 500 gig with CD2 hard drive that's Pro Tools compatible from BH Photo Video for $134, and a backup. So for the cost of less than 1 reel of tape, you can get 12 reels of digital equivalent storage in a little box that when it breaks, you can just go to Best Buy and get another one. So obviously the stuff has to sound really good for us to keep on using it.
Almost everybody, especially starting out, like the younger cats that come into my place, are so hung up about the gear and the technology and all this stuff. And I kind of, I make this analogy all the time that you don't go to a restaurant because the type of pan the cook's got. It's what the cook does with it. And it's the same thing with music gear. The gear in the big picture means almost nothing. It's 95% operator skill. So while you could talk about analog tape, you could talk about digital stuff, in the big picture it means almost nothing. So it's a big industry. People love selling equipment. They love selling you the newest thing. You got to get Pro Tools 8 instead of Pro Tools 7. You got to be 192K instead of 96K. The fact is, newer is not always better. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's not. But the amount of difference it makes in making music is nil. The amount of difference it makes in having some skills versus not having some skills, priceless. Who do we have next here?
I know a lot of bands now are actually doing like both CDs and vinyl. Is there since you do mastering, is there like a difference between mastering the vinyl version versus the CD version?
When we do mastering, we do vinyl at my place. When we do cut vinyl, we don't master differently for the vinyl, but there are certain limitations. As I was saying, like back in the day, part of the mastering was actually figuring out how to fit music onto a disc, because you have limitations as to amount of bass, volume of the track, the length of the track. Stuff actually sounds better on the outside of the disc than it does when you get to the center of the disc. So you actually have to worry about your placement on there. There's a whole bunch of factors that factor into vinyl. It's not just turn it on and record. So and the width of the grooves you cut, and how it tracks. There's a million things. We actually have helium and nitrogen tanks in our place that we use when we cut vinyl. It's a very physical thing. So we don't do differently on the music, but you have to take those factors in.
You kind of talked about the recording process before, but I was just wondering if like the line from tracking to mixing to mastering is like set, or can it go back and forth kind of?
Oh, no, it goes back and forth all the time. Part of, I think, why we've been successful as a mastering place is we never forget that it's a team effort. You know, when somebody brings me in the mix, you know, like I said, a lot of the amateur guys will come in for a consultation, and we listen to their stuff, and we make notes, and they go back and they fix stuff. But also professional guys do as well. So sometimes we go, man, you know, that bass player really, he doesn't hit that bass at all when he recorded the stuff. And you know, having that experience as, you know, both a musician and a tracking guy, I can tell this guy played with his fingers, he didn't hit that note well, and you're never going to have a good bass track. So the best mixer in the world is never going to make that sound good. The best mastering guy is never going to make that sound good. They got to go back and re-record that bass part. And so, you know, it's always a team effort. Every time I work with somebody, I go, hey, is your mixer cool if I call him and say, hey, can we fix something? Because I can get a much better master for him now. So, no, it's never set in stone.
Based on what you were just talking about, on your website you mentioned a program called Cedar, an audio restoration. So how far can that go towards fixing like a bad mix?
Doesn't do anything for a bad mix. No, audio restoration is kind of for, they use it for forensics, like, you know, if, you know, you recorded your wife in a divorce case or something, and, you know, you want to hear past the crackling or whatever, so, or FBI tapes or that kind of thing, but it's nothing to do with music.
I have been hired to by somebody that I think was totally insane to decipher.
I have too.
Yeah, it's not work. You should work if you get it.
Yeah. So, I've spent my entire musical life doing the management side and all that stuff, but what you're saying is really interesting to me. Where do you start? Like, where do you start learning about all of the different technologies and how to do all that? Does that make sense?
Can you give me a little, when you're saying where do you start, I mean, your goal is to eventually get into management?
Well, what I'm saying is, like, all of my research into the field has just been on the management side. But what you're saying in terms of, like, mastering music and more of the technological stuff and like the recording and stuff, I'm gonna be honest, I know nothing about that because I never spent any time there. So where do you start? If that interests me, where do I start?
I mean, I would start with some basics, like, you know, go on some websites like Gearslets and things like that, read a little bit to get some foundation, sit in the back of a studio at some point and just ask if you can just sit and observe something maybe once or twice, get some basic ideas of what's going on. I don't think anybody's got a problem if you're quiet and nice and you make that, once again, personal connection with somebody. If somebody says, hey, can I just sit and see what mastering is? I'm not going to say, no, you can. My client's cool with it, or if I don't have a client, that's fine. You know, if they're going to stop me every 5 minutes and ask a question, that's another story. But, you know, I think you can gain knowledge from so many sources now. But it just depends on what you're interested in. But I would just start making those connections and just kind of talking to people and picking people's brains. You know?
I noticed on your website there that you work with several different genres of music. Coming from your point of view, is it easier to master any certain types of genre of music, or is it harder to master like a full band? Or
the general rule in recording is the more parts you have, the harder things get. So, you know, and there are exceptions to all these rules, of course, but if you have somebody that's recorded, you know, 200 tracks of audio and they've doubled everything and, you know, it's a big band or whatever it is, you know, generally stuff gets denser and harder to kind of handle. The genre of the stuff really doesn't matter. As long as you're comfortable with bringing balance to anything, it doesn't really matter. You know, we have clients in New Zealand and Singapore and Africa and France, and like through the internet now we master stuff from everywhere. So, you know, next week I'm doing classical Russian piano stuff, and last week I did a death metal band for 3 days. And, you know, and it doesn't really faze you. You know, it's like some music, you know, sucks more than others, and you know, there's a certain tolerance you may have towards listening to that music all day, but you know, definitely kind of shut that off and do your gig. I mean, but it really doesn't matter.
Do you have a favorite type of genre that you?
My favorite thing is something that's A, well recorded, and B, has some real heart in it. So it could be any style of music, but when you can tell when somebody's really got their heart in it, it makes it a lot more exciting for you. So it could be anything, like hip-hop, rock, pop, whatever it is, but you can tell like there's only a small percentage of people that really like pour their heart into stuff, and when you hear that, you know it, so that makes it fun.
You mentioned earlier about perhaps there was a bassist that wasn't playing that hard, and you had to go back and require the mixer to go back and do some stuff.
It was you, wasn't it?
Was there ever a time that you, like, that your commentary on something, or your opinion about something, was so agreed upon by the artist that they literally went back and they changed that, and it became like a snowball effect and started changing almost everything in the song?
Well, not everything on the song, but usually, I'd say probably 19 out of 20 times the changes are usually positive. Once in a while, like I had a client this week actually, and I suggested some things for him to change on his mix. The guy is a really novice mixer, and what he changed on his mix kind of undid the little bit of good that was in that mix to start with. So I talked to him and I said, you got a couple things that got a little better, but overall, even though your first thing's kind of technically flawed and all that stuff, it felt better to me. So I'm going to take your thing that feels better over the thing that's a little more technically correct. So, most of the time the changes are good, and when they're not, you just go for the best feel.
You talk about like talking to mixers and stuff a lot. Is that just your philosophy, or do like most mastering guys do that?
No, I think that's kind of an us thing. Honestly, most people don't stick their nose in any place. A lot of guys are surprised when I tell them, like other mastering guys, when we talk, and I'm like, I called this guy, and he's like, you called that guy? That guy bit my head off last time I called him, And but that's just my philosophy. That's the way I do business, because I want it to be a team effort. And in the end of the day, most of my clients know I'm trying to do something good for them. It's not so I could put my stamp that says, Glenn Shick mastered it. It's because I want this thing that I'm on to be the best it can be. So, it's a team effort. If I can't do it from my side, then I need this guy's help to bring it forward. So if they understand that, that's great. Like I said, occasionally I step on some toes, and there's a few people that don't like me, and that's life you got to live with. So, anybody waiting here? Okay, let me go here.
I have two questions for you.
Get up.
All right, three. First question is, I worked with like a bunch of like punk DIY bands and stuff, and they enjoy being around the mastering process. And I've read that you've worked with some bigger names, and I was curious. You're in Atlanta, you probably work with a lot of rappers from Atlanta. Do they want to come in and sit in and be a part of that process, or do they just email you and they just let you handle it and wait for your response? And then also, we've been talking about record labels a lot in here lately too, and I was just wondering what kind of do they intervene in your process at all? Like people higher up in the chain of command, do you get, you need to do something else and stuff? Does that happen to you often or not?
Okay, well, let me address them because they're two very different questions. As far as like hip-hop artists that I work with over the years, it's, once again, we're starting with that relationship thing. I'll use an example like guys like Ludacris or Young Jeezy. Guys like that started with me back in the day as nobodies. So they sat on my couch like everybody else sat on my couch and said, here's my record, help me out. And for more than less of them, I kind of stuck my nose in their business and kind of said, hey, this is what we need to do to make your record better. And I called their mixers, and I did, the kind of intrusive stuff that I'm kind of known for. And, we got a relationship going like that because we ended up with product that they were happy with. As time progressed, it became, Glenn's fine. I don't have to worry about it. I trust them, no problem. Like Ludacris probably hasn't shown up for probably the last 6 records we've done, but like he called me for a favor. It was the How Low song that we did last year, and I was literally on a plane coming back from LA, and I had a horrible migraine. I was sick as a dog, And he asked me, can you please help me out? We can go to someplace in LA, but I don't want to. I want you to do it. And as sick as a dog, I went in the studio, I did the song. I literally walked out of the studio, threw up, handed him the CD, and he really appreciated it. You know, I appreciate him as a client. He's a really loyal guy and really, good person. So it's a reciprocal thing. Young Jeezy, same thing. I went in. We just did a new single for him, and I ran into the studio to pick up the song because they were in, of course, a hurry like everybody else did. And so I ran into Patchwork Studios, and they were filming some documentary, and they're wiring with me with mics and stuff. And I run in to get the disc, and I was like, "Hey, Jeezy," and I work with a lot. I work with a lot of people, and I was like, I thought this was the first time we worked together. But, he actually, I was like, good to work with you finally. And he was like, man, you don't remember me? And I was like, uh-oh. And, he was like, you did an album for me a long time ago. Damn, you don't remember me, do you? And I was like, oh, man. And I felt really bad. But, those are like very, big points in their life when they're starting out and like people helping them along the way. So you never kind of forget, everybody's that person. Everybody's, the same guy that's on your couch, and you treat them all the same. And as far as the second part of your question, as far as record companies intervening, no, they don't intervene with my process. They'll intervene with my schedule sometimes, and they'll tell me, I need it now, and I say my studio is booked. I can't give this to you now, and so it's a battle with schedule, but. If it comes to creative stuff, the artist is the only person I normally listen to, and the producer, but not a record company. So, yeah.
You mentioned like studio like Patchwork. I know like they obviously are big kind of in Atlanta, but as far as like how important are, I guess, relationships with like Tree Sound or like Patchwork and like places like that as far as you're concerned?
Well, it's the same thing I was, saying several times. Like, it's about being able to call people and call in, some stuff. Like, when I hear something that's good or bad, I want to be able to call the engineer there. All the guys at Tree I know, all the guys at Patchwork I know, David's studio, whatever. There's nobody I don't feel comfortable really in any of the studios in Atlanta that I can't not call and say, hey, can you reprint this for me, or can you adjust this and send it back to us, or whatever, or your intern dropped me a 16-bit file, I need a 24-bit file, whatever it is, they're usually there to help you out because we all want to do good at the end. So.
There's another point of the studio relationship with the mastering engineer, which is if I record an artist and they say, we want to get our record mastered, where do we go? Well, I try and give people several recommendations, but because I know Glenn, I value the customer service of not just him, but the other guys that work at his place too, that I can say, you can go down there, these are the things they do a good job, they'll treat you well, call Kevin down there, he'll help you out, they're nice guys. If this is your budget, you should think about this, you should think about this. But if the mastering engineer has a good relationship with the studios, I'm sure I'm not the only one that does that can recommend 2 or 3. And frankly, there's 2 or 3 out there who I know not to recommend because they haven't been responsive to the artist, or they have, usually that's kind of the end of the day. If they're not responsive to the artist, that's kind of the end of the line for me. But yeah, I think the relationship between the studios and the mastering engineers, for that reason alone, is very important.
Yeah, and honestly, like, with anything with recommending people, and David will probably say the same thing, I encourage people to try everybody out. And, I think you're in the wrong mindset when you kind of want to hoard business to yourself. You should really let a client actively be able to pick you and want you. I say, hey, look, David's a great engineer, try him out. If that didn't work for you, try this guy. He's a good guy too. And the same thing with like mastering guys. Like people come in and say, man, I can't afford your price. Well, I got another engineer. He's less expensive. But if you can't afford him, I know another guy. They have a different mastering place down here, and they're pretty good. So you don't want to be kind of protected and hoarding business. It really speaks not well of you to be insecure about your business.
I want to redirect a little bit. Glenn is also the board of trustee of NARIS in Atlanta, which has connections with just about every aspect of the music industry in Atlanta. Would you say that's true, that because of NARIS, it's between just about every kind of job in Atlanta?
Can I make a disclaimer first?
Yes.
As a trustee of NARIS, which is the Recording Academy, the guys who throw the Grammys and all that every year, I am not an official spokesperson of the Grammys. So everything we're speaking about is kind of off the record, just me as a participant. So anyway.
It's like that
yeah.
they talk at the end of like a medicine commercial.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right there.
Yeah.
But seriously, if somebody were to call you and say, I'm moving to Atlanta, I'm looking for a job doing X, would you have any advice to give?
Well,
you know, if I said I want to do this, would you be able to tell them to call so-and-so or the certain type of thing?
The Recording Academy, for people that either know or don't know, they have Grammy University, which some of you probably are in, but which is kind of our student membership. But Recording Academy is kind of the only organization I know that's really an umbrella organization for all parts of the recording business, all parts of the music business, really. So you can be somebody getting into publishing, legal, live sound, recording, and the Recording Academy actually is an umbrella organization that kind of works with all these things. It's the only thing I know that really does that. So, it's a really wonderful place to not only kind of become part of a community, but to network as well. The Recording Academy is kind of like, it's a members-only club. It's not exclusive. Anybody can join this in the music business, but it is, within it, a really amazing resource of people. So, you can talk to anybody that's in any part of our business. You can go to our social functions. We've got our own kind of Facebook. It's called Grammy 365, which is kind of a within our organization social network. So if you want to get advice from a guy like Jimmy Jam, or you wanted to talk to, like, say, this attorney in Atlanta for some, if you're looking into getting into, say, music law, you have connections that you can get right off the bat. It's a really nice resource, and there's a lot of things to the Recording Academy. We can talk about it if you want. So.
Well, I'm wondering, can I put you on the spot?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's say that if I were a young person and I were to stand up and say, this is my name, this is what I want to do,
mm-hmm.
just give them tell them a little something you can help them out with.
Sure.
Okay, then we're going to do this. My name is Eric Barton. Stand up. Tell Glenn, you just moved to Atlanta, you want to get a job. What kind of job do you want to get?
Songwriter.
Songwriter.
What should he do?
Okay. What genre of stuff do you work with?
R&B.
Okay. Some of our membership in Atlanta here include people like, Tricky Stewart and Jazzy Faye and all these other, producers in town here that work with songwriters constantly. What I would do if you wanted to work within the Academy here, you join a membership. You can get, I think, a Grammy membership is like $25 or something like that. It's not expensive. And you get on Grammy 365, which is our social network. You can post looking for a job. So there's like a job posting area that you could probably set up on there. You could set your homepage up to let people hear your songs and demo your stuff. You could actually send your songs to other members if you specifically wanted to target a certain producer or something like that. Whether they accept it or not is up to them. I'm not going to guarantee they're going to listen to it, but you can certainly have that opportunity that you wouldn't have otherwise. So, and then there's all the functions that we have. We have just member parties, and in these member parties, you can just kind of go, hey, what's your name? What do you do? Oh, I'm a producer. I'm a blah, blah, blah. Hey, that's me. I'm a songwriter. I'd love to work with you. Here's one of my songs. Maybe we can meet after. There's a million ways to kind of, shaking hands and making, that personal connection again. So, which is, like I said, it's all about that. So.
All right. My name is Candace Hires. Why don't you tell Glenn, you just moved to Atlanta. You want to find something to do. What do you want to do?
Management.
Okay. Well, one of our next week's speakers, like Monica Tanian, who's a manager of many engineering talents in Atlanta here. Besides picking her brain, there are other managers that we have in the organization. You know, I would do a Google search of Atlanta management and see some of the names. You can start seeing it if they're in your local NARIS chapter, and once again, you can contact them directly. You know, the other thing too, are people are a little more responsive of people within a community. So I think when you become part of the community, whether you're a Grammy Youth student or whatever, people are a little more accepting of the fact of having a stranger call them and kind of say, this is, you know, I'm looking for some help, I need some guidance, I need some advice, I need a job. So, you know, I think the same thing is going to apply as with songwriting, as with management, as with legal, as with publishing. You know, it's up to you to kind of knock on those doors and make those connections. But certainly, and the Recording Academy is just one way of kind of doing that, but it's a really quick, big door to open with a lot of amazing talent, and pretty much everybody that works in the music business is a member. So it's a nice talent pool to pick from. So.
Aaron Waldo.
It's kind of stole mine with the songwriting, but mixer.
Okay. Myself, David, we're having one of the really amazing things that the Recording Academy has as an affiliate is something called the Producers and Engineers Wing. And P&E is what we call it here. So the Producer and Engineer Wing is probably the largest part of the Recording Academy. And it's a brain trust of the best of the best. It's like, you know, we have an advisory council that basically works with people like DigiDesign and the Library of Congress. We work with the House and the Senate even for advocacy. We actually are in the process right now of doing something called the Performance Rights Act, which is actually, we're trying to pass legislation. You know, I get freaked out by this. We actually got a guy in Congress that lobbies for rights of musicians. We're trying to pass this piece of legislation now where, I don't know if you guys know, but in the United States, it's one of the few places in the world other than China, Iran, Rwanda, and North Korea that don't pay for terrestrial radio for the performers. So anywhere else in the world, if you play, I don't know, a Sam and Dave song or whatever, or say Aretha Franklin, Respect, or something like that. Now, Aretha didn't write Respect. So right now, the only people that get paid when you hear Aretha Franklin sing Respect on the radio are the people that wrote that song and the people that own that physical master. In other countries, Aretha Franklin would get a small percentage of the royalties from that song. In the U.S., no such thing. But the funny thing is all these other countries that pay for this stuff won't pay the Americans the money that they save for the artist because the Americans won't even pay our own people. So there's this ton of money right now that's available to all these musicians that we're fighting like crazy for right now in Congress through the Recording Academy and through the Producer and Engineer Wing to actually start a new revenue stream for musicians. And we also have another thing going right now where we're actually trying to pass a metadata. Do you guys all know what metadata is? Not? Anybody not? Okay. Metadata is embedded data within a song. So we're trying to actually pass something right now where there'll be a company like SoundScan that would scan every digital broadcast, and the metadata within there would tell you who recorded the song, what studio it was done at, what was the producer's name, what was the engineer's name, who were the artists on it, who were the background singers, every little bit of detail of that song. And it's because of guys in the Recording Academy that are trying to kind of preserve the integrity of all the stuff we do, make sure the people who need the credits get credited, make sure the people that are supposed to get paid. And then, you know, once again, if you wanted to become a mixer, you know, you join the Academy, you go to our P&E events. We're having, actually, at my studio this month, for Academy members, we're having a thing called Anatomy of a Song, or Anatomy of a Hit, I can't remember the exact title. But basically, Tricky Stewart, Cucurell, and Sierra are going to come and talk about writing a song, recording a song, mixing a song, and how it went from the very first start to the very end of it. And so you can totally be part of that. It's really neat.
Go ahead, Kyle.
The Billy Joel song, The Entertainer, I think it said like, you know, I can't have a hit, or if you want to have a hit, you got to make it quick, so they cut it down to 305 or something like that. Do you do like, is that the mixer's job or the master's job or the track, as far as, of course, it's what the artist wants as far as if they want to make it a hit, I guess, or just an album filler or whatnot, but I didn't know if that was...
Talking about song length now?
Song length?
I think that's kind of, you know, it depends on who's kind of making the executive decisions on that project. You know, sometimes you can suggest, there are times I've told a client, man, that song is really long you got, and, you know, and it was more just because it was kind of boring me. And, you know, maybe they had one too many extra verses at the end, and I said, you know, it'd probably be a lot better if you trimmed that thing off, but it was just a suggestion. It wasn't like, you know, you have to do it, you know. But you know, it really depends on who's kind of running the show, you know. So.
Can you spell out some more internet resources? Was that like maybe you or other professionals go to kind of like see what's news going on, legal issues, just kind of like general stuff that's relevant? Anything like Gear Sluts, whatever you said?
Well, I mean, Gear Sluts is a gear-oriented thing. You know, I don't hit a lot of those things anymore just because, you know, I kind of hear as much as I need to hear, but as far as like websites that I like for music, I mean, I'm always looking at like, you know, Billboard, you know, Tape Op, trying to think of other stuff like Mix Magazine's not so relevant to me anymore. I'm trying to think of other, you know, there's a ton of like private music blogs that you know, I think are awesome, and they're not really like industry things, but they're just somebody with an opinion, and sometimes just posting new music, and I'll go to those type of things. You know, there's really kind of no guideline to it. There's a ton of stuff out there if you just, you know, look. I wish I had a better suggestion for you, but I don't.
What do they call those, the legislation they're trying to pass? Do they have names for those two
The
things?
Performance Rights Act is the one about trying to start a new revenue stream for terrestrial radio, and if you go to producerandengineers.com, you can read about that as well as some of our other initiatives.
Let's get one more question. Eric Hardy's had his hand back.
Well, I'm going to, since it's only one question, I'm going to go to the topic that we're on right now. How hard are the radios fighting this legislation?
That's a very good question. I don't know if you guys listen to any urban radio in town here, but we actually have somebody actively fighting us right now. The person that owns 107 and a couple other stations, this is a woman that's dead set against this. And basically it comes out to, you know, a small pittance of money for these people a year. But they've made this into a horribly tainted issue. They're saying that we're introducing a new tax. First of all, the government has nothing to do with it. The government doesn't collect it. It's a private thing. It's not a tax. You can't call it a tax. It's getting musicians paid. And it's all done privately. So, you know, first of all, that's one thing. And then they made it into a racial issue, which, you know, I don't know how that even started, but they were like, they're trying to put black small-run radio stations out of business. And, you know, I think this woman who's been on this campaign of trying to, you know, not pay her fees, basically, because she's got several radio stations, has really kind of waged this one-person war against us. The National Broadcasting Association has an official stance about not paying it. They're afraid, you know, it's going to put radio stations out of business. But we're talking like such a tiny percentage of money. For most radio stations, it's in the hundreds of dollars, and for big radio stations, it's a few $1,000s a year, which is like, you know, 1% of their budget, if maybe. So we're talking really small numbers, and that might be high at that, you know. So yeah, there's kind of a smear campaign going on the opposite end of things, and you know, we're dealing with that. So,
all right. Ask him after class because everybody else is probably ready to roll on.
Yeah.
So, to wrap up here, don't pack up yet. I used to coach Little League. I like to help people and things on them to do the reverse order so they wouldn't start packing up on them. A number of people in this class and in 1102 have asked about, can they come by and check out my studio? Sure. So, if you're interested in this, check your email because sometime tomorrow I'm going to have a little like half-hour window where anybody that wants to come by, come on over. I'll walk you through both studios. I'll answer any question I can within a half an hour because I'm in the middle of mixing this record. So why am I doing it in the middle of the day when I'm mixing this record? Because I'm going to miss you. I'm not going to see you for a few days. But it'll be fun. I've had so many people ask me really about doing this. I could use a break. I need an excuse not to sit there and tweak that one channel over and over and over again. It's like a kid that like takes the paint off with a spot on the wall. Anyway, so watch your email. Pardon me? I'm thinking like 6 o'clock, 6:30. Like so many things in my life, it is pegged on what time I pick my youngest son up at school to drive to my house, eat, and drive back to the studio. I'm thinking probably about 6 o'clock tomorrow night. I will email you, and I will send you the address of the studio in there. I had one person kind enough to tell me that they're still not getting emails from me. Is there anybody other than the station who's not getting emails from me? Or they won't admit it. Okay, great. So I've got that. I'll get yours in there. And you got about to ask me a question.
Oh, well, my brother's coming in town tomorrow, and I just want to go.
Hell no! Of course, bring it with you. So, before we do anything else, let's hear it for Glenn Shick.